Hello, and welcome to the Imposter Syndrome Network Podcast, where everyone belongs, especially those of you who don't think you do. My name is Chris Grundeman, and I'm here with my co-host, Zoe Rose.
Hey.
This is the Enrico Signoretti episode, and I think you're in for a treat. Enrico is the head of research product strategy, as well as also, I think, still the senior data storage analyst at GigaOM. Enrico, great to have you here.
Great to be here, actually. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, diving right in, obviously, we actually both work together at GigaOM, but maybe it'd be worth starting off by talking a little bit about what a research analyst is and does. I mean, what does that role even mean? What's your day-to-day look like?
So, as you said, I have two roles at GigaOM. One is, still leading the storage team, and the other one is head of product research. I was pulled in the second role because of, some projects that I lead at the beginning of the journey of GigaOM's journey. But anyways, so let's start with the IT analyst role. So my role is to understand what happens in the market and report these trends and these, happenings to users and vendors. So trying to connect the dots between facts that are happening. So new technology that is developed, how this technology will impact the future of users, how they can adopt it, and finally try to look at the market landscape and analyze it to see which vendor is doing better in terms of implementing this new technology. What are they doing? Is it the right path for the users and so on? So actually, I am the man in the middle between users and vendors. Users need information. Vendors need to understand if they are doing the right thing. And by connecting users and vendors in the end, even if not directly, I am in the position to help both of them.
Yeah, that's interesting. And, to me, it has corollaries with product management inside of a company, right? Which a lot of times product managers are the ones who are tying together, the work that developers are doing or engineers are doing with the customers. How does the IT analyst, obviously that's an external third party. How does that work together in that ecosystem? Is there kind of a push and pull there? Do you actually talk directly to product managers, or is it all filtered through other folks, or how does that work on the vendor side?
So on the vendor side, I talk often with product managers and product marketing managers. And I don't see the same identical role between, the product manager internally to the company and the role of analyst, because yes, the product manager has to connect the developers with the sales and potentially the end users. But what we are trying to do is somehow influence this product manager. Okay, say, look, these users now have this kind of issues, this kind of challenges, and they are trying to find solutions. What are you doing in this space? Sometimes they already thought about it. They saw the same identical kind of needs, and they can talk about something they are developing. Some other times they don't really have an idea what is happening. And our role is just to understand it and return to the user and say, look, there are 10 players playing this game at this moment. There are 3 of them that are really advancing in the development of this kind of features that will help you in some way. Others are, so and so. So if you're planning for your new projects to adopt a vendor instead of the other, that's the way to go. And then we can go also deeper. Consider that GigaOM is very technologically focused, and most of our analysts are practitioners in the end. So we know technology very well most of the time. Most of our analysts also, if I think about me, I started as an assembly programmer, but I worked most of my life in storage. And so I know the technology, I know how to implement it because I was a system administrator actually. And then I worked, in pre-sales. I worked for a startup to do product management. So I covered several roles, and more or less, I can understand what these users need and how to translate these needs to something that is, understandable for others, including vendors.
So it's interesting that you talk about, you have that technical background, you have that experienced background. But that whole translation part, which is a key part of your role, what skill do you think benefits you the most there? Is it things like, oh, you have the technical background, or is it the understanding the people more?
This is interesting. I think I had the chance to cover all these, different roles. Okay, so I was a developer, I was a system administrator. Also, I was a CEO for quite some time in a small of a small system integrator. Okay, so I saw the IT from several, different perspectives. And I have to be honest, this made what I am today. So I try to see every single problem from different angles, because sometimes you see, this technology is not really good, but actually the implementation is what people need to, tactically solve the problem. And, yes, I mean, I don't want to know too much about what's inside the box in this case. I need to solve the problem today. Common sense is very useful in these cases. So, and I don't want to be taking too strong of a stance sometimes, just because I have to understand the people in front of me. So most of my work is listening more than advising or doing anything else.
That makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of roles should be more about listening than maybe they are. It's interesting you talk about kind of the diversity of your background and how that has become a strength for you. I think it'd be interesting to rewind. I don't want to date you too much, but I think you've been, in technology since the 90s at least. How did that originally happen? Like, why technology and why storage? How did that kind of come to be for you?
So why technology? Well, it started very, very early. I mean, I was the kind of small kid trying to understand how the radio of my grandparents was working. So I tried to dismantle the radio to see all the components. I was not able at that time to, rebuild it, but actually that was an experience. And from there, my dad came home. I was very young with the Commodore 64 that maybe many of you don't even know about. And I tried to program my first games. So I had the computer. I didn't have the games. I wanted to play. So I started copying line by line in BASIC. There were my magazines with the code printed code, not in a media that was possible to read. And I was there, you can only think about the debugging and everything. I mean, and it was, the game started with actual coding. And then I started to understand what I'm really doing. So from there, I started to understand, well, I can do different things. And because of the school that at that point I chose, I studied microprocessors, how the, computers work internally. And my first job was assembly programmer that became very quickly assembly stuff, very quickly C programmer. But for multiple reasons, I was the guy that again was the radio kid at that point. I started doing system administration, and because the companies I was working for was already managing a lot of data for the time, I started working in storage, more and more storage. And at the time, Unix was the big guy, and I learned Unix from the manuals. And it is not like today. I mean, Unix manuals were shelves and shelves of books at the time. And I was lucky because my employer at the time had an Apollo before HP. We are talking about, almost 30 years ago, probably. Before HP bought Apollo, acquired Apollo, I had the chance to work on an Apollo system. So graphical system workstation at the time, and silicon graphics and all these kinds of things, some microsystem. And then every new job that I took was, big systems with a lot of storage, storing images, working for some time. I worked for a small system integrator, and then the system integrator became mine company. We were building a system for pre-press. And so we were talking already about a lot of data. Well, the data that you were managing in the 90s. And that's from there. I mean, it's storage all the way.
I'm a slightly younger than possibly you are, would say. Um, Not that that's bad at all, but it's It's really impressive. Like, hearing your journey is really impressive. And I'm not going to lie, I'm slightly intimidated because, I've worked in industry for, I don't know, probably, if I were to count, maybe around 13 years or somewhere around there now. Yeah. And from my perspective, it's like I could never reach what you've reached. I could never get to that point. What are your thoughts on, I guess, a newer person coming into industry and seeing where you are and seeing how you got there in your journey and thinking maybe that, oh, well, I'm too late?
Well, maybe it is the contrary. I mean, I had a lot of opportunities, and I was lucky because I was always in the right place at the right time with the right technology. I had a lot of passion, and but again, as I said, I had the opportunity to turn on an Apollo workstation. At that time, we were talking about a massive computer that nobody was using in our office, so it was a mistake from their point of view. For me, was a huge opportunity. But today you can learn everything. There are, so many resources, and it is so easy. I have on my desk now a cluster of Raspberry Pis. I mean, with that kind of cluster, you can learn everything. And maybe you don't get the performance or whatever, so you can do anything spectacular. But actually, from the point of view of the learning platform, you can do whatever you like, and there are information everywhere. At that time was difficult because even if we were, pioneering IT in general with the companies, with the friends, with everybody, I mean, there wasn't internet. There was no internet. There was no YouTube for tutorials. There was no Stack Overflow. There was nothing. I mean, that's communities, Discord, or whatever you are using today. So no, today is way easier. I mean, actually, the problem maybe is the contrary. It's this abundance of information and choosing the right field. But you can always, jump to the next field. I mean, I started with data storage. I still really like data storage, but in the last couple of years, I started digging more and more in Kubernetes and still infrastructure. But actually, we have multiple reports on Kubernetes infrastructure. Moving to other parts of the infrastructure or moving to, up in the stack, it's not difficult. I mean, it's just that you start. I have also a passion for microcontrollers. It's not that I am a developer anymore, but actually I can use MicroPython, and it's like Python. I mean, the difference is minimal. So potentially I understand a little bit more about how to use these microcontrollers now, just because internet is full of projects, it's full of resources. So no, I mean, it's easier today.
Interesting. One thing I was thinking whilst you were talking is, over my career, I've made a lot of mistakes, but I found that the mistakes that I've made actually helped me a lot to learn. Is there any kind of changing experience that you can think of that actually this specific mistake, or maybe these multiple mistakes, has actually made you better at what you do, and without them you wouldn't necessarily be where you are today?
Well, there are, let's say, at least two types of mistakes. The mistakes that you are doing during your job. I mean, day-to-day mistake, like delete everything, okay, and on a Friday afternoon, and you have to spend the whole weekend without the right backup and everything, trying to recover everything. Or there are life mistakes, including choosing the wrong job. I think that deleting everything on a Friday afternoon makes you wiser. So the next time you think twice, you check twice, your scripts and everything. Okay, that's something that will happen to everybody, and it's part of the job, I think. When it comes to life mistakes, I mean, choosing the wrong job, I think a couple of times I did such a mistake, but really it was anyway an experience. At the end, it's an enrichment anyway. I mean, you understand better how to deal with people. You understand better the kind of jobs that you don't really like, and you had a totally wrong expectation about the role, the things that you have to do in this job, and then turns out it's not really that. But again, we work in IT. There is very, very high demand of people in IT. So if you make a mistake, you can always start searching for something new.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I think as a manager, I tend to talk to people I'm working with if I'm mentoring them or maybe I'm their manager or whatever. And I tend to say, knowing where you want to be is actually really difficult, especially in the beginning. It's really hard to know what you actually want to do if you don't have the experience, even more so. I think I like that maybe taking the wrong job as not necessarily a failure, but actually a learning experience. Because I've also done that a couple times, I will say, and it's you definitely learn quite quickly.
Yes, indeed.
I think obviously we are talking about imposter syndrome and in general in our kind of journey of understanding people here. Is there ever been a time that you've really struggled with that and thinking, oh, I'm not good enough, or I won't actually meet this? Or, has there been a time that you just really struggled with your confidence? And how is it that you actually overcame that?
Well, I can say that every time there is something new to do, yes. I mean, it happened all the time. So, you grow confident with what you know, and you think that what you know is, you are good at it because people try over time to say, oh, you are good. So keep up the good work, etc., etc., etc. But actually, then something happens and somebody tells, because you're good at this, you could do also this one. And you say, okay, maybe, I don't know. I never, tried this. And you have to think a little bit. But again, if you split the problem in small pieces and then you start thinking about it, sometimes at the very beginning you think these are new challenges, big challenges. You're not good at it. You can start. And then honestly, I always worked in organizations where people were good. So if I don't know something, I can always ask to others, especially now in Gigam. Gigam is growing like crazy. Sometimes it's also difficult to keep up with new names and everything. But actually, there are so many analysts now, so many other people. When I have a doubt, I just ask and they answer. So if you have it in the right organization, it's not difficult. There are some organizations that are tougher than others, where people want to be, always the first, and there is competition internally. And this is something that, for example, now in my team, I try to avoid at all costs. So collaboration wins hands down when it's possible.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I've seen a number of times through my career, right? It is folks who hoard information or think that if they keep information from other people, they'll be more valuable. And I think to your point, right, sharing information tends to make everyone better and actually make you more valuable than trying to hoard it, right?
Yeah, I learned a lot of time ago that there is no way you will be successful by keeping everything for you. And also, it's very difficult to grow as a team if you have a lot of single players and not, you don't play in the right way altogether. When you have a good team play, then, things happen magically and everybody covers for each other. So in the end, I always try to make people that work with me shine because, if they did some good work, I even remove my name from the report lately because I prefer to have them like first. I mean, they did most of the work because, I'm there helping them, mentoring them and building the rapport with them. But actually they really do 70-80% of the work, maybe more sometimes. There is no way that I will put my name on top. I want them, to be recognized, to be successful, because at the end, it's the success of the team.
Yeah, and that's another really interesting or important fact, I think. And this is something that I think shifts, at least it did for me from kind of early career to later career, is, as you've done more things, as you kind of build a bit of a personal brand, honestly, I think just as you build more confidence in yourself, it becomes easier to give credit away. And not just that it becomes easier to give it away, but it also becomes less important to keep it. Now, not everyone learns that lesson, I think, but definitely, folks who are starting out really need their name out there on projects, on papers, they actually need that credit to be able to build their career and kind of build their reputation. Whereas those folks who are a little bit later stage, maybe don't need that as much anymore. There's another thing that I've talked about with other people in kind of the privilege of, needing or not needing a big fancy title. And I think, again, that kind of comes with seniority where you maybe stop caring about that. But the time you stop caring about it is when you don't have to care about it anymore. And so there's a little bit of a dynamic there that the people who care about it, in some cases, actually need to care about it, right? It's actually important to them and to their growth.
Well, I consider that, I started working with, in international vendors and clients in general many years ago. They know me and I have a large network of connections now. And I'm not doing it, I'm good or bad, but I'm trying to be as honest as possible with all these people so they know me. And I think that in the moment we are able to grow as a team, they know anyway that, we work together. So also these new analysts are more, can be trusted because again, there is a flow of information and I think it's beneficial for everybody in the end. So for me that, that help them will help me in the future if I need it. And also for the vendors in my specific job today is helpful because they have multiple contacts. So everything goes in parallel. They like the flexibility, the agility of the team. So why not?
Yeah, I mean, from kind of listening to your story, one thing I think the biggest thing that stands out to me is that trust. Trust that the advice you're giving is backed by knowledge, but also realistic. Well, what's the expectation? What are the needs? And then also the trust in your team. Like I've had managers that I know that if I didn't make it obvious that I was the one that did something, they would take credit for it. So it's nice. I mean, it's disappointing in those cases. Those are wrong. I know that, but it's nice to hear the opposite side where you actively say, I want to acknowledge that you did much of this work and you did a great job because I think actually, from my perspective, that makes you a better tech as well because you're not trying to be the superstar. You're trying to build a good product or in this, a good service. You're trying to improve the solution, whatever it is, and then build up your teammates so that your team gets bigger and better and stronger. I think my takeaway here is trust is so critical to having a good job and a good career because you have your trust to your clients, you have the trust to your teammates as well. I like that.
Yeah, in general, I spent some time at the beginning to select the right people. And if we work well together, then there is no reason to stop them to be successful and show to the rest of the company and the clients that they are the ones that did the job. And so I think you have to spend more time at the beginning to, to find the right people, to find people you can trust, and then you can start from there. It's helpful to be, to have let's say an experience because again, I did their job. So I can understand better what they do, how they do it, if they are, overselling or not. So that is very helpful. I think that the most human aspects, it always takes some time to understand each other, to see if you can work together. Nobody's perfect. I am probably the first example here. But anyways, we are talking about the fact that if you can't pass these moments where, there are issues that come up and you find a way to work together also when there are, some internal challenges, communication challenges, everything, and you try to understand why and explain things, be clear with your team, then I think that it's easy.
Yeah, that resonates with me pretty deeply. And I think there's a couple aspects to it, right? One is that trust but verify piece, which is by building your knowledge, you can spot when someone is BSing you, right? To call it out. And then also by building those relationships, right, you can build trust where you can gain information from other folks. And there's a little bit of just kind of inherent trust, what you were talking about in the way the industry has evolved to provide so many resources out there that we can trust that, there's probably good information out online somewhere about almost any technology or technology challenge that we face. As you said, right, there's Pluralsight, there's Coursera, there's YouTube. I mean, the list go on and on and on. There's blogs and all kinds of things out there or events are coming back now again. Super interesting. One kind of unrelated question that I wanted to get in before we close out. obviously, or maybe not obviously to everyone here, but you're Italian, you live in Italy. I think, your career's kind of been built without having to leave Italy. And I wonder if that had any bearing, right? I mean, obviously, a lot of the tech firms, as you talked about, right, are international or even US based tech firms. A lot of this technology has come out of US universities. I mean, obviously, the world's not US centric, but technology seems to feel that way, or maybe just to those of us in the US. And I wonder if being Italian has, been a good or a bad thing, or neutral in that.
So you're correct. In my career, one of the things that we have done, the idea was, okay, we were a small system integrator, like 12 people, and we want to, excel in what we were doing. To do that, we thought, okay, we can't sell, at that point was EMC, now Dell, or NetApp or whatever. We have to find something different, something that is really innovative, something. So we started to travel, and we started to, travel a lot to the US to find, trade shows. So, because when the technology arrives in Italy, everybody can access it. But actually, if you start contacting the startup that is in the US, early stage, then maybe you find something. So at that year, it was 2006, I think, we contacted Compellent. We started selling Compellent in Italy, then acquired by Dell later. But the idea was, okay, let's go there. Let's understand what we can find there that is unique, that is, that can make a difference. And so advanced that, the competition will struggle to compete with us. And another thing that we did, also because we were small and we didn't have resources, was writing a blog. And again, it was 2006, 2007, when blog was, growing. And we were lucky. I mean, so we had this idea to be informative more than selling what we were doing. And people started sending me emails saying, look, we are translating your blog with Google Translate. That at that time was really bad. So why don't you write in English? And I started writing in English. And by doing so, vendors started to contact me and say, why don't you, we love what you write. Why don't you give us a blog or a paper or something that, goes in deep with this concept and everything. And I started doing that. This is the very beginning of my role as a blogger, analyst, influencer now. I mean, I was lucky because nobody was writing in Italian. So my Italian blog was, well read at the moment. And the other thing is writing in English helping me to improve my presence in this industry. And from there, events and, how it works. I mean, you start adding connections, you start taking jobs, consultancy, advising, other stuff, papers. And then I met Gigam.
Yeah, fantastic. So it's interesting that I think being in potentially a somewhat smaller market or smaller niche with, just Italian language in technology was kind of a boost, but then also you needed to reach across and kind of make that connection to the English speaking world and kind of branch out.
Yeah, I think that if you keep talking in your native language and not in English, it's harder. And you can have a career in IT, but it's, there are some roles that are just not present in Italy. So if you want to make money with some of the roles, like you can be an analyst for sure, but it's limited to Italian market, which is a limited market in the end. So if you want to have a career in a large analyst firm, you have to talk English anyway. But also if you want to work with a vendor, you have to talk English.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point because I work information security lead for obviously Europe and South Africa and Middle East. That's it. But that is a really important point is, whilst we are international, the company language is English. So, we've got all of these languages in it and we do translations here and there. But by default, speaking English is quite key to our daily working environment to be able to work together and collaborate. So that is a unfortunate case. I wish I had the skill to learn all the languages and not make anybody learn other ones. But that is a good point. Mm-hmm.
Well, you say I just feel lucky that I was born, in a place that my first language is the language that has kind of become the common denominator, at least in technology.
I just wish I wasn't as rubbish at learning other ones.
Me too. Definitely a weakness of mine as well. I think we're going to have to wrap it up there. That's about all the time we have this week. Enrico, this has been awesome. Really appreciate you being on. I think we've barely scratched the surface of your illustrious career. So we may have to have you back another time. But just in case, is there any kind of last, I don't know, parting wisdom, advice you'd like to give out, or even just maybe, some current projects that folks can check out, or places where they can contact you?
So you can contact me on LinkedIn or Twitter. It's very easy to find me because there aren't many Enrico Signoretti in this industry. So if you Google it, you find me in all the social media and everything. And the other thing is, as probably I already said it, but don't stop learning. I mean, that's the most important part in our job. If you remain excited and you want to learn more, there are other opportunities around the corner anyway.
Awesome. Thanks again, Enrico, for being here. Really appreciate you being on. And that's it for this week's episode of the Imposter Syndrome Network Podcast. We'll be back with another guest next week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers. Quick question. Is there anything that we can't say?
I mean, you can say that I look like Banderas. Some people told me that lately. I mean, I don't think it's true, but...
Well, now that you say it, I definitely see it.